Good evening and welcome to the Caring View, the online social care chat show exclusive to YouTube, airing live each Tuesday. Before we get started, don't forget to hit subscribe. There is a bell button, so find that bell button. And before we get started, all of the views that we express in tonight's show, probably mostly Dawn's, are actually of our own and not the companies we represent. So, how are we all?
Wet. It's very wet here in Essex. Yeah. Otherwise, okay.
Well, it is raining, so I'm not really surprised there. How excited are we for next Wednesday and Thursday?
Yes, very excited. It's going to be good.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, it's the Care Expo next week in Birmingham at the NEC, and we actually get to meet each other for the first time. Going to go out for a few drinky poos, a bit of a party, a bit of a dance. Yeah? No?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a cocktail WhatsApp group, so if anybody wants to come join us for a drink, just let us know. Invite you in.
Come say hi. And your Health and Social Care Club are doing a panel on the Thursday, isn't it, Mark?
We've got a panel Thursday and Wednesday. So, we've got one each day. So one is about the future of social care, so the social care reform, and one is about recruitment and retention. And I'm also joining Dudley Palvey, Sonia Ray, who's been on the show, on the Wednesday afternoon to do a talk on equality and diversity, which I'm very excited about as well.
Fantastic. Dawn, what are you looking forward to most next Wednesday? Or Thursday?
Well, apart from meeting you both for the first time in nearly a year, I think it's just actually being in kind of the same vicinity as everybody. I think, we've kind of spent the last year, 18 months talking to people over social media and WhatsApp groups and never actually seeing them face to face. So I think that's what I'm most looking forward to, definitely.
It's going to be mental being in a room full of so many people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So exciting.
Karaoke, because from what I hear, he does, he loves a bit of karaoke. So I'm waiting to get his permission.
Sorry, I was multitasking. Well, I don't mind karaoke. I've got to have a few drinks in me though, but yeah.
We could do Islands in the Stream, Mark. What do you reckon? I'll be Dolly.
Oh, well, yeah, who's something like Kenny?
Anything else new in the news this week? Lazy social care workers need to get off their arse and get the job or get out, I think is the mantra from this weekend's Health and Social Care Secretary. Dawn, what are your opinions on that?
I'm so cross. I'm really, really cross. And I think everybody knows that I'm cross. And in fact, I'm quite incensed. And I think it was the Radio 4 interview where our Health and Social Care Secretary stated that we feed people and put them into bed. And, if they can't be bothered, then they should go get a job somewhere else. And I was really, really angry. And I think that just shows a massive misunderstanding of the expertise and the skills that those that work in social care have. And it just goes to show his massive lack of understanding and the fact that he actually needs to go into services and spend some time there, because he said this out loud. And I think what's infuriating is the fact that he said it out loud. You may think this type of thing. Don't say it out loud to the people you're supposed to be supporting. And I was really cross over the weekend. A, I didn't feel well. B, I felt pretty rough. I was tired. And then you see this type of thing crop up on social media and it kind of creeps up on you. And I was really disappointed. I think with Matt Hancock going, we thought maybe we had somebody new, somebody fresh, somebody who was going to take a different stance on things. And I think it was the language and the tone that was used more than what he said at times.
Yeah.
But who am I to say? Who am I to say?
I think he then went one. I was just going to say he then went one further, didn't he, and told people that they were on universal credit just to go and get a better qualification and to get a different job, which actually is a lot of people that work in the care sector. Which
upskill yourself, I think, was the term that was used. They need to upskill themselves.
So, You see, this is where the biggest annoyance for me came from, because it's fine people looking down on social care. It's happened, for decades, and it's still going to happen moving forwards, no matter what change we bring in. But when you're the figurehead and you are representing not only a workforce and a sector, but you're there as a guiding light for the people drawing upon those services. Imagine sitting at home and thinking, oh, well, all you think I need is for someone to come around and clean my bottom, and off we go. You know, it was absolutely, it really was the worst he could have done. It doubled down on all the negatives that we didn't want, and upskilling ourselves when, for me, if someone turns around to me and says, I can't do your job, I could never do your job, that makes me skilled because I can do something they can't. And if people can't do a carer's job, that makes carers skilled. To sit there holding the dying hand of a person because their family are too far away and might not get there, or are just holding the hand while the family go to the toilet whilst they're holding vigil, is a skill. To be able to bring joy and laughter to people's lives is a skill. To be able to support people with their nutrition in a inclusive manner is a skill. You know, we have so many skills that we bring to our roles that it doesn't have to be about degrees. And this is what we talk about, career development. You know, you can come into care without a master's or a degree, and you can make a real career for yourselves as long as you care and have got the skills to connect with people. So I really do think Sajid Javid needs to have a really hard think about his role and go back to the drawing board and see if he actually understands the sector he's representing right now. Because if he doesn't, we can just knock the care out of his title. It wouldn't bother me if we don't get somebody else completely. But I'm with you, Dawn. This weekend was infuriating.
No, and I think that he says it in a remit of, okay, so he's on Radio 4 and he says it in a remit of, well, if they can't be bothered to get a vaccine, he obviously hasn't had a discussion with people. He hasn't had an open forum. He sat around in a boardroom discussing with these leaders that he put all over Twitter a couple of weeks ago. He hasn't sat with carers. He hasn't sat with managers. He hasn't sat with deputies. He hasn't gone to learning disability homes or children's facilities and services. It's just basically all about feeding people, putting them to bed, and if they can't be bothered. Yeah, this morning it was, well, if Premiership footballers don't want the vaccine, that is disappointing. And it's so frustrating. And I was really encouraged by his appointment. I was really encouraged by the fact that we were having somebody new. And yeah, I was furious. Absolutely furious.
Let's see if Sajid or Gillian will reach out to us eventually and come on for a bit of a chat so we can discuss it with them. Any other news from the week?
Well, you have some.
I do have some. It is a bit bittersweet. I know last week it was my first week back after being absent for a while. And I'd just come through our first outbreak, and this honestly has nothing to do with the outbreak and nothing to do with who I was working for, because I absolutely love Keppelgate, the care home that I've gained most of my skills from. But I do have a new job, and I will be leaving Keppelgate at the end of this month, 29th of October to be exact. And I will be joining the Institute for Health and Social Care Management as their new Director of Social Care. I know, very excited. If that title seems familiar, Jane Brightman, who is a regular guest on our show, vacated the post earlier last month. And so it was available, and stories told, I'm there. So I'll be starting there in November. Really can't wait to join them. Hopefully we'll be able to bring some real change to the sector and to make that membership valuable and unparalleled for people within social care. So that was my big news tonight, and it's been hard secret to keep. I've been like a balloon just expanding, ready to pop. So I thought we'd start on a really good high. It also does mean that I'll be leading the social care innovators. So many of you that I do know through the innovators, I'll be seeing a lot more of you. And hopefully more people will join us, and it's going to be fantastic moving forward. So yes, I'm seeing all the comments. Thank you so much, everyone. It is completely out of the blue. It happened very rapidly. I think it was last Monday, and then I found out by the end of the week, hadn't I? So it was a real shock, but very exciting. Now, this is a bit deflating going from such, for me, good news to discuss what we're discussing tonight. So I think I should already mentioned in the comments about how a manager was portrayed in a recent television show called Help. Stars Jodie Comer and Stephen Graham. I haven't watched it myself yet. I don't think I'm in the place to be able to watch it yet. Everything is still quite raw for me. We've still not had the funeral of one of our family members from our outbreak, so I probably will struggle to sit down and watch that and digest that properly. However, after discussing what we discussed last week, we did sit down as a three and we thought, why not bring some real stories onto the show? So we've got three wonderful people who are joining us. Some are still managers, some used to be managers, but all have experienced an outbreak in their homes. So we're going to bring them in. We've got Nicola, Laura, and Joanne. Now, I am a colleague of Nicola's. I know Nicola through campaigning work. Dawn, you know Laura through ICENI. And Joanne, I think we connect through the Outstanding Managers Network on Facebook, which is the number one place, other than the Care and View support group, to be if you're a manager and you need support. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. How are we all?
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
So,
Congratulations, Adam, first.
oh, thank you. It's been a hard secret to keep. It's been a hard secret to keep. So I'm not disappearing from the sector. I'm still going to be here doing as much support as I can for managers and for people. So, yeah, really looking forward to it. So, stories, it's the outbreaks. We've all been in these situations where COVID has ripped through our homes. So, Dawn, you know Laura. So, do you want to introduce us to Laura? And Laura, do you want to tell us a bit about your story?
Yeah, so obviously Laura worked with me at ICENI and came back from maternity leave early because of the struggles that we had at ICENI House. And everybody's aware that we had an outbreak very early on last April, May, and we had a gentleman return from hospital. They didn't inform us that he was COVID positive until 5-6 days after. And COVID kind of went through the home. We lost a number of residents, and it was really heartbreaking. And during this time of unsettlement, Laura was quite heavily pregnant with her little boy, and came back early to run one of the units at ICENI because we desperately needed it. And yeah, it's been a really hard time with COVID. We also then created our own visiting pilot in conjunction with Laura and some others, and we ensured that we had family members coming into the home from September last year. So Laura's kind of been through the ringer, really, and has since taken over ICENI House as a registered manager. And unfortunately has had her own outbreak. So that's why I invited Laura here this evening, because I felt that she was kind of hidden in her maternity and kind of had to watch all this going on at the time. She kind of had to watch from the background, hear from the background, hear on text messages, group chats, things like that, what was going on. And then Laura came back to testing, visiting, creating our own policy. Everything that I could throw at her, she did. And has then had her own outbreak. So I'll let Laura introduce herself. She is quite nervous, so please be nice to her, Adam. So introduce yourself, Laura.
So I'm Laura. I'm the manager at ICENI House. So I went on maternity 2 days before we went into our first national lockdown. So in the beginning, I was sort of oblivious to what was going on the outside, being stuck at home, only getting to see a midwife. And it wasn't until I came back how I realised actually how bad it was and what Dawn and the team had been through. So yeah, it was quite an eye opener speaking to him once I had come back. And it was beginning of September. We had our own outbreak. It was only 3 members of staff, But waking up on a Saturday morning to your COVID tests, track and trace, and yeah, bit of a mad morning that was.
And there's that fear, isn't there, of has it gone further? You know, will it be more team members? Will it be the residents or our family, the people we support? You know, will it be me? You know, a new mother with a kid at home. Will it be me? So, what was going through your head when those notifications came through?
I literally called the first person that I knew of who was in the building, asked him if any of the three were at work, which two of them was. So I was like, just get them out, send them home. And I was like, why? What's going on? And yeah, they've tested positive. They need to leave. And then I said I would come in and go through the results, because it's not easy to go through on your phone, to be honest, because every time you was flicking through them, then more would come through. And but yeah, luckily it was just 3 staff members.
You say just 3, but I know from experience losing one is like losing a limb. You know, it's how do you find that covering, and it's that fear of burnout for everyone, including yourself. So what were your worries? How did you manage without those 3 team members?
2 of them were domestic, so to keep up with the cleaning, the regular cleaning, was then more pressure on the domestic team. And public health, the COVID hub wasn't that much help, to be honest.
I think as well, why are care homes waiting 3 to 4 days for results? Because like Laura said, she's got 3 members of staff in the building. So they've got to be kicked out. So why are care homes still having to wait that long for results?
I mean, I remember we did ours. We got a positive LFT on the Monday, and we thought, right, well, let's do our PCRs. We didn't get our results back until the first result till the Thursday, and then the rest of them came through the Friday evening and the Saturday morning. So that's 5 days. I mean, luckily we reacted and we shoved I say shoved everyone. It's an awful saying, but it's what it felt like. Shoving everyone in the rooms and making the team cover themselves in plastic constantly, and we still got 11 out of 16 positive. So imagine having no clue and only finding this out on a random whole home testing, waiting 4 or 5 days. It's absolutely bonkers. Now, our council did say that if we were, I say it was our council, it might have been public health. They did say that if we were struggling to get our results back in time, they would actually send a unit out to the home and do site testing and take them directly to the path lab. And I said, well, that's absolutely fine, but we're on like day 6 now. So what's the point? Everyone's been isolated. We've been acting like we've been in an outbreak anyway. So do you feel like you got the support that you needed more from the sector, from managers, well, not managers, the health system, the social care system?
Not really, no.
Sorry, I'm laughing. I think all poltergeist in our house.
Apparently there's power cuts going on my estate, so if I disappear, that's where I've gone. I am in Norfolk.
So I rang the COVID hub and then rang public health, and they take just so long to get back to you. I came back on Monday to an email of what they wanted to happen. So 2 rounds of testing. I think it was by the end of the week, they then called us back and asked how we were getting on and if we needed any help with our testing. No, we've got it under control. We've done our 2 rounds. Everyone else came back negative. And I tried to call them the following Monday in regards to opening and the email that they had sent. And I didn't get a call back until the Friday. So we decided, as everyone had tested negative on both rounds, we decided to reopen the home.
And touch wood, everything was okay?
Yep, everything's been fine since.
Fantastic. So, Joanne, I don't really know much about your story or your outbreak and what your experiences were. So, was it a bad outbreak? Was it both the people you support and your team? Tell us a bit about it. Oh, 1 second, Joanne, you're on. There you go. You were muted. You're back now.
So what happened with us in between Christmas and New Year, we did our residence swabs. New Year's Eve in evening, 6 came back positive. So you can imagine I went into a tailspin. I was like, oh my God, this can't be right. Anyway, it was right. And from then on, it was downhill for 8 weeks. It was constant. Every day we was lateral flow testing before every shift, morning and night. And we were sending home more than 50% of staff turning up for the shift because we were positive. Residents were coming back positive, more and more and more, about 80% at residents. It was like working in a war zone, and I'm not saying that lightly. It was the most traumatic experience of my nursing career. It was horrendous. Oh, I can't hear you.
Bloody muted myself then, didn't I? So, how long were you in outbreak for, Joanne?
It lasted about 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had a lot of loss of life as well, unfortunately.
Oh,
so,
I'm sorry.
Some days it was 2 and 3 deaths. It were horrendous. I eventually tested positive myself. So I would try and work from home. I was doing teams with local authority and CCGs, rotors. Our admin were doing payroll from home. Luckily, deputy manager tested positive a week before I did, and our governance manager never tested positive at all. So there were always one of us in there, but we were sleeping over, as were staff. Our business contingency plan went straight out window because on a scale of that big, there were no way we could manage it at all.
No. So this is a side I think people don't realise, because I've not watched Help, so if I'm misinterpreting what I've heard about it, someone please jump in. But isn't there a part of it where they take one of the residents out of their home and go home with this person to keep them safe? And actually what they should have been portraying was the fact that we left our families and we moved into the homes to keep them safe, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So huge, commend to you and your team for doing that. What was the hardest part, do you think, of going through it?
Feeling isolated with a lack of engagement from anybody out of support groups that yourself and Mark are in, Jonathan Cunningham. That's where I got all the information I need. I didn't get it from where I should have been getting it quick enough.
Yeah.
I sent a CQC notification in after the first 6 come back and 4 again day after. As I emailed CCG and local authority saying we are going to hit crisis within 1 week's time. I need some help. But we didn't get anything. Nothing.
Do you feel like you were not to blame, but do you feel like you were made to feel like you were to blame?
Yes. I mean, we had a weekly teams with local authority and CCGs, and it was class and infection control, which I have to say in Lancashire were brilliant. But it was like supposed to be a supportive meeting, but I was telling them what I needed and they couldn't help with none of that. So to me, it weren't supportive. It was taking me time when I should have been concentrating on something else. I begged to have some oxygen in building just so that we could give O2 therapy to these residents that were coming to the last days of their lives. And I got told that we're not an end-of-life facility. And so we couldn't have any. And I'm like, seriously, we accept people on end-of-life and palliative care. So what's the difference?
I think this is what upsets me, Joanne, and this is what I said to Adam and Mark last week. So my experience was similar to yours, but this was last March, April, May. Why are we still in this position where, as managers, because last year I got it, we had no testing, we had no understanding, everybody was up in the air. We didn't know I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. And I've said to Mark and Adam before, and to Laura, I had no clue what I was doing last March, April and May. None. I completely and utterly winged it. But why are we still in this position? What we hear about lessons learned all the time. So why are we still in the position now where Laura's not getting any help? You're not getting any support. Probably Nicola's going to have exactly the same kind of story. Adam had exactly the same story last week. Why aren't we learning lessons from managers like me from a year and a half ago, and Mark, who had his own outbreak and had to move out of his family home? So why aren't we learning lessons from that period of time ago? Why isn't anybody standing up and thinking, right, okay, we need to do something about this? Because what you've described is heartbreaking. And we're losing managers and we're losing social care staff every single day because of what everybody's been through.
I think, Dawn, one of the reasons that we're not supported and we're not getting any help is because we're not involved in any post-COVID recovery talks that's being had with anybody within, wider community. We just completely ignored the whole time.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And they're not incorporating the managers. They're not. There's no inquiry happening. Nothing is moving forward whatsoever. And my heart breaks for you, Joanne. That must have been dreadful.
Yeah.
I mean, the only post-COVID stuff we get is, a post-outbreak form to fill in. And it asks us what lessons we can learn from this, how can we prevent this from the future? And I'm like, well, first off, I have no lessons to learn from this because it was just a case of luck run out for us. We did testing as we wanted. We did everything as we should do. We had no admissions. There was no visible way how it got into the home because everyone had tested negative. The lessons I've learned is actually there is no staff contingency from councils. There is no staff contingency from the sector. And in my outbreak meeting, I got, have you asked your staff to do extra? Have you asked them to do extra shifts? No, it's not crossed my mind at all. And I've not once had a phone call I've had phone calls from other colleagues in Lancashire who I've got quite good working relationships with, and they've meant the world to me. But I've not had one from the outbreak team to go, how are you doing? Did you manage to get through it okay? The only phone call I've had is, you've not finished your terminal clean checklist and sent it through yet. Can you get that done as soon as possible?
Well, I think Laura's got a nice meeting next week, haven't you, Laura? You're on mute.
Yeah.
So Laura's got a meeting. So tell us about your meeting, Laura.
That's with the council regarding recruitment.
Are they going to wave a magic wand and try and fix it? I mean, they need to sort something out. So is it a case of they're telling you how to recruit, or they're telling you that you don't have enough staff, or?
Yeah, they're going to try and help us.
Good luck, Laura.
Yeah.
I mean that with all sincerity. I really do. I really, really do. So, Nicola, I think the last time we met each other in person, we were in London at a John's campaign event. It was fabulous. It was about a month before COVID gripped the world, and we stopped seeing people in person.
Wasn't it?
Oh God, honestly, it's like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah.
And you were a manager at the time of a care home up in Lytham, not far from myself. But I don't really know much about your outbreak either. So what went on? How were things for you?
So for us, our first it was actually asymptomatic. So I took over the service in March, end of March, and our first one was the 25th of April. It was a Sunday. I'll never forget it. And got a phone call from the staff at the home. They said, we've got such a person's tested positive. Well, they went in for fall. So how they tested, it doesn't make any sense. And then the next phone call coming because someone else had tested positive, had also gone to hospital. So I remember ringing the ward and saying, like, they don't have a temperature, they don't have a cough, but they had, they caught it from it didn't make any sense. And the first phone call I had with Public Health England, and I rang them to explain what had happened. And they said, you only need to isolate the residents who were showing symptoms. And I said, but these 2 people are not showing symptoms. And there was just silence. And my heart just went and my stomach flipped. And I was like, okay. And I said, you don't know what I'm going to do you? And she said, you only need to isolate the people with symptoms if they don't have one. And I said, right, okay, thank you. And I remember putting the phone down and I just thought, right, okay, what are we going to do? And I was really, really lucky. I was very supported by my operations manager and Christine. She was an absolute, she was there on the phone to me, what we needed to do. And we isolated the whole home as best we could. And we were dementia. So obviously there were some ones we couldn't. So we moved the chairs around, we restored chairs, we closed the cafeteria off, we set like another dining table into the lounge. And the staff were scared. Did we manipulate the system in order to try and get testing for staff? We may have done, to try and see exactly what was going on. At the unit you said before, Adam, made me laugh because I was trying to get a unit to come to the home to get everyone tested because I'm dealing with invisible fires. Like there's no one's got symptoms. And we got 4 tests from Public Health England, 4, and they went missing for 6 weeks. All 4 were positive. CQC then released 10 tests, which are one of our operations.
Sorry, just go back. So 4 tests.
Yeah. That's
how many residents? How many people living in your home? 34.
34.
And how many team members?
About 24, 25.
And you got 4 tests?
I got 4 tests. And I had to manipulate again to get those 4 tests. So I got these 4 tests. They went missing. The results didn't come in for 6 weeks. Couldn't find. They're ringing round. Couldn't find. It's probably a data breach to think about now, but that wasn't my priority. I need to know where these tests had gone. Then we got 10 tests from CQC. At this point, we were starting to see an increase in falls. People were eating. So all these symptoms that people now, it's quite common, weren't common then. So we didn't know what we were sort of going with. And Adam, me and you had been at an event and it was about nutrition, and the milkshakes and things like that, we were offering those out, and we started trying all this extra stuff, trying to pull it together. And for me, it escalated. The staff team there was people testing positive all the time. Myself moved in. So our outbreak didn't end really till June because there was no testing. I didn't know if we were clear or not. The most one thing that sort of, I don't know if yourselves are discussed or not, but when someone did die of COVID, whatever they were dressed in, they stayed in. They didn't get changed. And unfortunately, the first person that happened to, we didn't know. So as soon as we knew that, we were then washing and dressing and getting the clothes what the person wanted to be in. And I think there's these extra bits these unskilled workers did to try and make things happy for the family. My mother-in-law, Janet, she and her neighbour knitted us these hearts. So we coloured them. So when we were attending funerals, because we couldn't go in and the service was restricted, I'd give one to the undertaker to put on the casket and then one to the siblings, the family members. So they had something because also they couldn't be there at the end. And then watching, we opened us again for end of life. People could come into the service. It wasn't a problem, but this one family, and it just stays in my head forever. And they were looking after somebody who they had underlying health conditions. They already had somebody living with them who was vulnerable. They were looking through that window, watching the mother die. And just how can you comfort somebody? It's giving those phone calls to people and they're turning up and the family members are collapsing and the heap in front of you and you're supposed to keep your distance. And it's that. And it's like these unskilled workers were actually there. We were picking people up off the floor. We were going that extra mile. We were trying to think out the box of what we can do. There was nothing. There was no support. We were lucky. We were down to a small amount of PPE, but just masks. We had everything else. Of the company I worked for, he spent an absolute fortune bulk buy masks. Because I don't think myself and you were having conversations of where to supply and offer to help. And because we're trying to get hold of it. And it was the staffing team went the extra mile. They didn't know, as a manager, I just started a service, and you know yourself, as you start a new service, they're getting to know you, you're getting to know them. It's a trust issue. I didn't even know what day it was. I was sleeping over. I was waking up having it. So I think at one point we were down to one carer, one senior, me, the deputy manager, the maintenance man, and the cleaner. and that was it. We had no cook, so we got slow cookers. So you were putting, making sure that there was food on the go and continuously trying to go. And I remember trying to be in the council because these volunteers, this army of people were here, they were available. Oh, we can't come into a COVID positive service. I was like, why? Like, what's the point of you? What can you do? And the same as Joanne has had this COVID recovery phone calls, and they're ringing. So how about I tell you what I needed, and then what we needed to get from that. Obviously, we were a care home, but the team worked hard. You do feel judged, I must admit, for the whole thing, letting the families know that it's in the service, what you're doing, and obviously. It's just heartbreaking. The whole thing was just absolutely heartbreaking. But to go that period of time was so long, and the testing was just, we shouldn't have had to manipulate the system just to find out if a staff member was positive. And that was it was awful, but we did. We got through it. We were very, very lucky in the sense of we did lose 4 residents. We were at home with 34. And we had our survival rate was a lot higher than it was in the local community, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And that would never have happened without the team of everyone doing their own, going that extra mile. Because I've never had I didn't catch COVID, but I knew when the staff members they've hit COVID, they recover, then they were straight in covering long shifts, so then the other staff members had caught COVID, and it was continuously those people going that extra mile. But as managers, you're going into the service, you're being upbeat, you're walking in, you're like, we've got this, we're going to be fine, we're going to be all right, you're doing a great job. And it's having that shoulder, to someone just to blurt all this out to. And I remember my sister FaceTiming me, and I just got out of the bath and I was led in the bath, and she went, "You okay?" And I remember crying. I said, "I can't save them. I can't save them. They're dying, and I can't save them." And she was like crying her eyes out on the. She says it was one of the not a nice phone call. And I remember it was just because I was watching what was happening. I thought, what can I do? What can I do? But I'm not a nurse. But it was that was hard, and I was very, very fortunate. I was very supported. Though she couldn't come into the building, she was on the phone to me. She was there to help me, and I know a lot of people didn't have that. So I am very lucky to have had that.
So, I mean, first off, my heart breaks for you, Nicola, because going through this so early on in last year, without all that support. So, how did you feel then when Matt Hancock sat there in front of Jeremy Hunt and said there was no problems with PPE? We weren't behind on starting the testing. There was this ring of steel for care homes. And then the CQC doubled down on all of this and published death reports for how many people died in care homes from COVID. How did that make you feel?
There wasn't one, was there? From the very start, we had residents, an example, we had someone who got admitted to hospital, and they needed to go to hospital, and they discharged them. They weren't admitted, actually, were in A&E. They discharged someone with advanced dementia at 3 o'clock in the morning with antibiotic prescription that could only be collected from the hospital, that the hospital weren't admitting people in to go. I couldn't actually cash it in. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the person was absolutely delusional. And they said they had tested negative. 2 days later, they had tested, the result come back, they actually tested positive. Where was the protective circle? We argued that we did have an outbreak. Obviously, we're still going through it at the time. And a gentleman, and the results was actually one of the people's results that got missing. And they'd gone to hospital. And I think I'd done 2 24-hour shifts that week. And I was exhausted. I was, you're reaching a point of breaking point. Your mind is not as strong anymore. And I'd rang, the hospital were ringing me, said they were trying to discharge this person back to us, like, he's not well, you can't come back, he's not well, the temperature obsess. Then a matron who was working from home in A&E rang me and was telling me they were raising a safeguarding about me refusing this person coming back to us, and I'm not having a bath. Again, it got to, I think it was 1:30 in the morning, and I had to ring my regional manager to ask for help, because I was, you fight going through because you're so tired. And even then she was arguing, he said they can't come back, there's something else going on. He actually had sepsis. If we hadn't have fought as hard as we did that night to keep that person in hospital, they were in hospital for 6 days. And where's the protective circle there? They're elderly, they had dementia, they maybe had signs of COVID, but actually They didn't. They had pneumonia, and it was actually leading to sepsis. But they'd had some paracetamol, so the temperature was down. They were acting more confused. They had sent that person home. The consequences for that person's life, I just felt they weren't interested. But in the interim, if you spent so much effort fighting for me, fighting with Operation Man, this went on for like 3.5 hours to the early hours in the morning just to keep somebody safe. And I think sometimes people miss, actually, as a manager, you're committed, you're fully there, you're there supporting your residents no matter what. You move into the homes as we've done, we do extra shifts, we stay there, we live there, but also doing all this fight in the background. And it shouldn't be this hard to keep our residents safe.
No, I wouldn't worry, Nicola. I had 9 complaints in 9 months from the hospitals alone, where I physically refuse until this person had had a scan and had an chest X-ray, or had actually seen a doctor in some cases. I had people arrive at A&E and had seen a nurse, and the nurse would determine whether that person was fit for discharge. And I'd say, no, they need to see a doctor. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry. I think that there was like a hotline in respect to me at one point, because I wasn't accepting that these people were getting really poor NHS care just because they were elderly, or because they had a dementia, or because, they've probably got COVID, so we'll send them back to the care home. I didn't feel that was acceptable. And there was an ever vicious circle of you're bed blocking, you're not accepting somebody back.
How unfair, you're stopping this person from going back to their own home. And there's that argument all the time, you have to be so strong. It was like, we're not coming back. And then they were discharging them. It's still 3 o'clock in the morning. So this, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, turning up and saying to the night staff, they've been tested, they're negative. And then actually 2 days later, you get on the phone call, they're positive. And I was like, what's that achieved? What is that achieved? Because not only have they gone travelled through the paramedics, there could have been other people in the car. That's just spread all the way through. I said, but they went into hospital for a reason. They needed help. It was so unfair at those beginning stages. It really, really was.
And it wasn't just that for you, Dawn, was it? And you don't need to go into details on the show, because I don't know whether you told me in confidence, but you had issues with paramedics judging you and passing comments, and it wasn't just the hospital.
I don't hide anything. I had a paramedic screaming at me, pulling her mask down, telling me that we were riddled in COVID, to the point where I had to scream at her back and ask her to pull her mask up.
Oh my word.
If that was the case and we were that riddled down a corridor, pull your mask up and be professional. And
didn't she tell you that she needed bunk beds in the ambulance?
Pardon?
Didn't she tell you she needed bunk beds in the ambulance to come see you?
We might as well bunk bed these ambulances, however often we're coming back here. And I said, we're not clinical staff. We're not nurses. We're not doctors. We don't have oxygen. We didn't have people like you, Nicola, that were symptomatic. I've said before, I was playing dominoes with one gentleman in the morning. By 1 o'clock, his lips were blue. That was how we kind of knew that things were going on. And we called them back, and she said, I might as well put bunk beds in this ambulance. I was like, really? Lovely. And then she made a complaint about me because I asked her to pull her mask back up. So it's kind of, it was horrendous. And I understood that everybody was under pressure, and we were all in kind of the same boat, if you like. But at the same time, the NHS was getting that respect.
And we
weren't as services, and we weren't as a whole remit. So it was really difficult for me. I really struggled with it.
It's the clapping. It's like the clapping, and and it was just before COVID hit, we were classed as unskilled workers before this. So then, because I remember there was during the discussion, and I can't remember exactly what it was said, and we were unskilled workers. Next thing, we're skilled workers, saving the world, and now we're back again to being unskilled workers again. And actually, the investment needs to be in social care. It needs to be social care, because social care is causing probably the backlog to NHS now. And when's they going to recognise that? And then for me, the isolation beds that I don't know if you saw a deterioration, but so residents that were going into hospital with COVID and needed that extra time, they're coming back. So people come back, contracted, because they've been touched. I felt like maybe the services, if somebody was, say, under some with the dementia, I don't really like using that word, but if they would come back sooner. It's like if they didn't fit the sit there and be quiet criteria, they would go and come back in an ambulance with you. which is really, really unfair. And I do think, we touched on this previously, but I think they weren't equipped to deal with somebody with a learning disability or with dementia, and they thought these isolation beds will just contain everybody, but actually it wouldn't.
I know from my experience, when people, obviously, that we were supporting with learning disabilities, they refused to allow the carers to go in. But then about 20 minutes later, they'd be phoning, begging for a care worker to go in. They'd be like, well, you can't, we've just argued with you about the need to go in, that they need support 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. So actually,
you shouldn't laugh, should you really?
No. But you couldn't make it up, could you? I talk to people, it just sounds like a story, doesn't it? It's just surreal. I think when I look back, we've talked about kind of the support from an organisational point of view. My care home was in the middle of a village, in the middle of nowhere. And I remember, food supplies were running short. And for me, the villagers were really supportive. So I remember we ran out of milk almost straight away. We ran out of kind of meat, veg. And actually, I remember just being on the WhatsApp village group being like, if you're going to the local supermarket or the farm shop, please, can you grab something? We'll give you the money back. And the villagers in around the care home I was managing were really supportive. We're dropping bits off, almost 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, saying, don't worry about the money, as long as you're okay, shout if you need anything else. Even had a CEO of one of the supermarkets drop off a supply of long life milk that lasted us for about 3 months. So we were extremely lucky. What was it like in kind of the local communities where you were? You're all on mute.
I think for me, our family members were absolutely amazing. They kept in contact. They were extremely supportive despite what were happening. They were dropping off sweets, the chocolates, biscuits. They were just they needed information, and they were missing the loved ones. They wanted to be coming into home. They knew, difficulties that we were having, but they also had confidence knowing that we were actually fighting for these residents. Everybody was supportive. I know I phoned up Dunelm, and it was like a Saturday, and I said, if I send my husband up, can we buy every sheet and every towel that you've got in your store? And they said, yeah, absolutely. And that's what we did. I sent my husband up with Land Rover and trailer, and he filled it all up and brought it, because we were running out of things so quickly, because everything had to be isolated for 72 hours. When you've got like 3 floors and a huge home, we were running out of all sorts, plates, knives, forks. But, community really pulled together, and local supermarket, they were dropping things off for us as well. And just, staff were amazing. They were so disappointed when they couldn't come into work if they tested positive, because they were saying, well, I don't feel ill, and they had that feeling of they were letting you down, because they were, the new residents needed them, but it was just one of them things. I just hope nobody ever goes through anything like this again. But just listening to everybody's story, I don't think anybody's learned anything. You can see now up and down, lots of homes are having outbreaks again.
And in all honesty, nothing has been learned, because and I will say this, because I'm not going to be a care manager for after October. When I had our first initial outbreak chat, which was only an incident meeting, I was asked whether the team member I had who had tested positive on her LFD was symptomatic, to insinuate that she could actually come into work, because she wasn't symptomatic, because we were so short-staffed. So they were actually suggesting having positive people working in the home.
Well, I think one of the things where, Adam, I agree with that, because I had different conversations from local authority with people, and I used to get really frustrated and angry with them, because they were asking me questions in a way that they weren't keeping up to date with regulations. And I was like, seriously, how do you come out with that to me when we've moved past all that now? But we had same again with masks. We got we ordered 2 big cratefuls from China, because we run out of masks and we couldn't get any anywhere right early days. Yeah.
think we were quite lucky in the community because I think the home that I was in, Adam, was not too far from myself, and it was like the local surgeries. They were dropping off masks and visors, and then the local community, the 3D machines we were getting. So I mean, I think at some points we ended up with quite a lot of stuff, and we're trying to share it out between everybody. And the same, we had chocolates and sweets, and you know, we're just sharing them out. The company was sending stuff out as well, so we're just making sure that there was stuff the night that was all shared out of what we were doing. When we first had positives, I was surprised. We had a few people just quit, just like, that's it, I'm gone, I'm done. And you know, because we've been such a small area where there's like a village really where I was. You know, but then people just turned up. There was people turning up with clothes. There was people saying, so we've got chocolates, we've got bread. I think Greg's had come at one point and dropped like a load of stuff off for the staff members. I think you had Greg's as well, didn't you, Maddie? Was it Pound Bakery? Was it as well? That was it. Yeah, and they come round, and Fox's biscuits come round. You know, and there was loads of that from the community. And when the outbreak was sort of recovered, I remember that the family members were turning up with like bottles of wine and, you know, big thank you cards and stuff and things like that. Just say like thank you to everybody. And it was really, that was really nice. It was really, really nice to appreciate it. It was, I suppose, when you're trying to be upbeat with the family members, they're not coming in to visit because of, you know, the outbreak, and you're trying to be, you know, everything's great, you know, we're doing this, but they did say, the one thing they did say, they were kept really informed. They were really grateful for everyone to be honest, because you can't sugarcoat it. You just have to be honest with the situation. At the time, you know, the only person who sugarcoated it was Boris, at the, you know, and saying everything was okay. Well, we were all in the middle of struggling with it all. You know, PPE's fine. There's no issue. There's not actually, I think we rang every single service, and there was a WhatsApp group where everyone was sort of trying to help each other, trying to find where have you found it from and stuff and things like that, all trying to work together, which was really, really nice. So I think for me, the community, biggest thing for me was actually the community groups. I think care homes pulled together a lot more and sort of worked together a lot more, which was nice to see, because sometimes I don't think there's been an event that's actually brought people together like that before.
Yeah, the dynamics definitely changed since COVID came in. I mean, I think what we found is we didn't obviously go and publicise it to all of our community that this is what we've got in our home and everything like that. But our relatives were coming and were going, right, what can we do? Give us a list and we'll order stuff off Amazon and we'll get it delivered tomorrow for you, or we'll go and pick up this, or we'll go and do this. And, you know, we were just trying to say to them, no, just go home, have your time, we'll cope, don't worry about it. But the fact that they were so supportive and going, we're really going to help get through this, and we're going to help you get through this, because I know what you're saying, Nick, about putting on a brave smile or anything like that, but I suck at emotions. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and if I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm happy, I'm happy. So, you know, I had sometimes relatives were phoning me, and I was just literally sobbing down the phone. You know that scene from Blair Witch when big snot bubbles? That was like me on the phone. And they were just going, Adam, it's fine, you're doing what you can. But you hit the nail on the head. It's that communication, and it's keeping in touch with them and letting them know what's going on. You know, we're a tiny little community, so we had an ambulance outside our home. All the relatives would have known about it because word travels fast. So as soon as the ambulance has departed, phoned everyone. You know, this is what's been going on. This is where we've been at. And we have got a couple of people poorly. You know, don't worry about it. Don't panic. And we're trying to do as much as we can. So that communication really was key. I think as managers, and what's great about tonight is we've got 6 wonderful people here, and yes, I'm including myself. Why not? So we've got 6 wonderful people here having this conversation. All right, 5. We won't include Mark. It's okay, Mark. We won't include it. But what's sad about it is all 6 of us have gone through outbreak scenarios in our services, and I would have never imagined way back in February, March last year that we'd be in this position where it'd probably be harder to throw a stone and hit a manager that's not had an outbreak than managers that have. So for the people who don't listen to us, for the services who tell us that we need to look inwards and reflect and learn lessons, what did we do well? We've only got a few minutes left of the show, but what would we give back to those services to go, actually, this is what needs to change. This is what we learned needs to change so that we're more supported, just so that they can hear what it is that we need. Because everyone watching the show tonight has heard all the amazing work you've done to keep everyone safe and the inevitable deaths that you did have, but how committed your teams were to lessen the blows of that. So what would we be telling people? Actually, this is what needs to change now. These are the lessons you need to learn to help us moving forwards. I'll go left to right, starting with Mark.
I think for me, we often talk about multidisciplinary, reviews, don't we? But yet, when there's an outbreak, like Nicola said, you are very much blamed. And I think you spoke about the CQC contact. During our outbreak, we had nobody contact us, nobody from the local authority, nobody from CQC. And it was only until after the outbreak, bearing in mind it went on from October to the end of November. So you're talking like a 5-6 week period. Nobody returned any emails, nobody returned any voicemails. And then the CQC rocked up at the door to do an infection control audit to make sure that everything we had in place was suitable. And it was almost like, I knew my inspector really well. And she said to me, as soon as I pulled up outside, I knew you'd have everything in place, but I've still got to carry it out. And I've still got to ask you the questions. But it was very much a blame culture question that she was asking. It was almost like implying that it would have been one of the staff that had caused it. So I think for me, it is just having that kind of, joint up working and, listening to providers, listening to care homes, and actually, they might not be able to send staff, but actually come up with something better than, can the manager cover all the outstanding shifts? Because actually we know that there is not going to be a manager that can cover every outstanding shift unless they move into the care home, which is obviously what I did. But not every manager's in that position. If you've got children, you've got family at home, then, and I remember it was either on Jonathan Cunningham's or on the outstanding managers group, there was a manager on there that said that she had an outbreak and the local authority told her to go into the care home, or they put an embargo on the home, and she had to take, I think the son was like 6 or 8 years old. He was the same age as one of my daughters. And she had to take him into the care home with COVID to do a night shift because there was nobody else to do the night shift. And I think, for a local authority to put that pressure on somebody is absolutely, outrageous. And I think if we've learned anything, it is that care homes, need to be treated with the respect that they deserve, that care staff need to be seen as skilled workers. And I think, you wouldn't pick up that phone and you wouldn't drop an email to somebody if you didn't need help. You would be too busy running around left, right and centre looking after your residents and your staff. So actually, when you do pick up that phone and you ask for help, that something should be there. And I think in, 20 months down the line, local authorities should have contingency plans that are actually fit for purpose. Yeah. Because I think even now, they don't have a contingency plan that would actually work for the majority of care homes, and definitely not for a learning disability service. They might for an elderly care home a bit more, but yeah. So I think for me, it is that joined up working and just listening when somebody says that they need help, actually being able to offer them some kind of help.
Sorry, I was just trying to catch up on some of the comments on there. Some anti-vax stuff going on. Dawn, what do you think people should take away? And I completely agree with you, Mark. But councils do need contingency plans, because the amount of times they said to me, "Well, what's your contingency plan? Why is your contingency plan not working?" Well, what's yours?
I know.
What is yours?
Do you know what? And Aisha will know this because she's in the same area as me. There were so many providers on the weekly call saying we don't have a contingency plan, we don't know what to put in it. And I remember, I think you sent me yours, Adam, which I then added my own bits. And I sent it to Essex. And I was like, here you are, use this one. It's absolutely fine to use. I know other services are using it. And still, I think it was 3 weeks later that everybody was still like, we don't have one in place. We don't know what to put in it. And I was like, I've given a copy of the one we're using. Why is it not being... And I think it's that, if somebody's offering support or they're offering some kind of guidance that they've got in place, is share that around. They're just... I don't know. It seems that I think providers definitely during the pandemic have got so good at sharing information and, working with one another. And I know definitely in kind of where I live, I see it more so now, if somebody's short staffed, they'll, especially in home care, they'll offer their staff out to come and support. But I think there still needs to be that kind of partnership working with the local authorities and care providers, instead of kind of pitting us up against one another, actually, getting us all in the room or on an email thread or whatever it is, saying, look, this is what one situation's got. Is anybody able to help? Can they offer advice?
Completely agree. Dawney.
I think, as ever with me, I think one of the lessons we need to learn is how skilled and experienced these staff are. Working through an outbreak like I did, with no testing and with no support from the local authority and no support from CQC or Public Health England for that matter. I think they were doctors, they were nurses, they were family members, they were social workers, they were the Falls team, they were physios. were nutritionists and dietitians, and they were making decisions. And I think that the lesson that needs to be learned is that we need to stop calling these people unskilled. Hugely. We need to stop putting them in a box, and we need to start recognizing what they do every day. And it's something I'm really passionate about, because there was so many expert skills coming out throughout the last 18 months, and not just where I worked. You'd read stories all the time about these amazing people that had done some amazing things. I've seen they made it snow in July because it was somebody's wish during the pandemic. And that just didn't come from me. That came from a whole team. And I think that is the huge lesson to me that we need to learn.
Yeah, no, completely agree there, Dawn. And I still am amazed at seeing that snow in July. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Feels a lifetime ago now when you were telling us about it, but absolutely wonderful to see.
I remember you telling us, and then it didn't go ahead, did it, on the first day? And I was so disappointed. I was looking forward to all the photos. I was like, oh.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Nicola, takeaway points for people to learn from.
Takeaway points for me is one of the things that we did pick up on, and I don't know if anyone else did. We did do analysis on our outbreak and where it came from, and one of the points that we did miss was actually the audits. So actually, falls had increased the week before, and food had deteriorated. So it was all these little symptoms that actually we picked up from the end of it. And there was our company, our regional manager did an investigation to look at what could we learn, what was things. So that was that. So these things mostly before tested. So obviously, testing might pick this up now, but it was thinking on food, and the nutrition, milkshakes, and it's trying to get that food, and paracetamol for me was the biggest thing, and to get it in quickly. I'm going to touch on the unskilled worker section. So, I don't know yourselves, but before when I've worked, then I speak to relatives and they're just a carer. Actually, no. Actually, start standing up, start saying as managers, actually, no, they're not just a carer. I said, they are this, they're a person, they're a therapist, this list all the things they actually are doing, and actually are skilled in that. And I think as managers, once we start promoting that within our teams and start really, really pushing and correcting people when they just said they're just, actually, no. If someone, one of my good friends, she, the head housekeeper, in a service. Now, there's nothing she does not know about infection control, and she's your infection control expert when you go into a service. But if you refer to this, she's a housekeeper. No, actually, she's an expert in what she does. And I think as we are going forward and moving forward, let's do that. So when they are questioned the justice, actually, no, but they're not, and push that a lot more.
That's really interesting, that, because we all do observations when we're thinking of temperatures and blood pressures and oxygen levels, but actually going back and doing an audit and going, well, actually this was increasing beforehand. So I think that's something I'll reflect on and take back to my service before as well. I think that's a really good point, Nicola. Joanne.
For me, I'm a big thing I have a big thing about integration and about us all working together. I mean, I've always worked in NHS until I went working as a home manager 5 years ago in a home. And boy, have I had my eyes opened. I went from being a professional with a lot of responsibility in NHS to suddenly all these doors were closing in my face. Like suddenly I'm not as good as I used to be. I found that amazing and shocking that care staff are looked down on no matter what, but yet you look at what's happening on a daily basis and your care staff are as knowledgeable as your enrolled nurses, and they're making quick decisions about these residents that they love and care for, because let's face it, we're in this job because we care and we do get attached to our residents. And to see staff in care homes just dismissed as unskilled workers, it's shocking. But I think that if CCGs and local authorities, when they talk about neighbourhood teams and integration and us all working together, why is such a huge aspect like social care not involved in anything? We just disrespected each way we turn. They build different models for discharges and they build this and they build that. where have they ever liaised with anybody in social care? They haven't, apart from local authority adult social care team who don't know what it is we do. So, you know, that's one thing that really frustrates me that should change. If they want to talk about integration, then come on, join us in and integrate with us then. But
Yes.
that's happening.
Completely agree. And one day we will have this white paper of true integration between health and social. I think, I can't remember who it was on Twitter earlier on today. Can we stop talking about fixing the social care sector? Because fixing means that, you know, it's going to be quite an easy thing, and it's not. It's going to be a huge thing. And actually change and reform is more or less rebuild it, you know, into something much better than it currently is. Laura, a couple of minutes left. So what do you think people need to learn from this?
So for me, it's mainly the support. It's the first time that I've had to deal with an outbreak on my own. And yeah, I didn't know what to do for the best, and I didn't have the support.
Yeah, and that is it, isn't it? It's that support. Just someone to go, you're doing well. You're doing
Yeah.
it. You know, you're doing everything you can do. Don't worry. Pat on the back. It's crap, this, and it'll feel like it'll never end. But, you know, for me, it felt like a collective psychosis in the end. It felt like an actual fever dream, because it was both the longest 16 days of my life I've ever had, but also the shortest and quickest. It felt like it was months ago, but it was only a few weeks. And it felt like it lasted forever, but I blinked and it went. And you just need those people to go, you're doing okay. You know, you are making the right decisions. Bash it out with us. Let's have a chat, you know. Give us your ideas and we'll say yes or no. And support you that way. So, yeah, no, I agree. I'll leave to you, Mark.
Yes. So I can't believe it's been over an hour. Time just, I think that we say it every week, time just flies by, but it really has flown tonight. Yeah. I think I look at like the timer and it's like 20 minutes, and I look at it again, it's like 59 minutes. But yes, so we've got some really exciting weeks coming up. We've got a week on deputy home managers and their role within the services. We've got a week coming up on activity leads and a debate about whether or not we need an activity lead in a care service or not. And we've also got a week on recruitment and retention with cohesion, which I'm really looking forward to. So yes, we've got lots coming up. As always, we have had some messages of ideas, such as the activity lead and the deputy week. So if you have got any ideas or you want to join us, then please do just get in contact with us on either our Facebook page or drop Dawn, Adam or I a message on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. We're more than welcome to have you on the show and to take forward your ideas and present on them. Anything else, Dawn and Adam, before we go?
Not that I can think of, apart from I really can't wait for next week. It's a shame that we couldn't go down that before and just do like a collective show before the expo and do it together in person on like a little table. It'd have been fun. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the topics coming up. Really, really am.
Yeah, and like we said at the beginning of the show, for those that joined late, we are going out on the Wednesday night for a meet and greet. So if you want to join us, we have got a WhatsApp group where I think about 11, 12 people that are joining us. So if you want to come along, then drop us a message. We'll send you the WhatsApp link so that you can join the group. And it'll be good to meet everybody that we've met virtually. So.
Okie dokie. So, well, good night, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next week.
See you later.
Thank you again for joining us tonight on The Caring View. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And whilst you're here, check out some of the other videos that we've got up online. If you've got something that you think may be interesting for us to discuss, or if you want to guest spot with us, then drop us an email to thecaringview@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook. All the information is down there in the description box. But until then, have a good evening, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.